All right, can anyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me? Good morning.
Yeah. I wonder why my camera's not coming on.
Do you have it down at the bottom?
I see it, but it won't let me click on it. Oh, maybe because I'm in a Teams meeting. Maybe I need to leave that.
Yes, so that your camera work for the others.
Yeah, I had it turned off though, but now it's not even giving me the option. I'm going to leave and come back.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Boom. There we go. Joanna, how you doing?
I'm good. Sorry, I cut the auto off because we have an announcement.
No, you're straight.
All right. Sorry about that. Thank you. Are you guys doing all right? Ready to go?
Yeah, doing great. I'm going to present. Do you mind if I just practice hitting the
Yep,
present
that's
button?
what I was going to suggest. Go for it.
Boom shakalaka.
Awesome.
How we looking? Looks good?
Yes, sir.
And then when we do it, so on the other end, does it show our face or is it just the slides?
Yes, so it had the slides at the top and it has your faces down at the bottom. Mm-hmm.
Love it. Oh, we can do polls too. Sweet.
There we go.
Awesome.
There you are.
It wouldn't let me do my camera because I was in that Teams meeting.
Oh, cool. Hey, what's up, Matt? I'm looking at who's in our session. Boom.
Good morning, B.
Right, Brian.
Morning.
I should have just taken an office at Highland Springs and we should have just all presented today.
Oh, I see Matt from Goochland. Good to see you. We miss you and Henrico.
We do. What's up, David? Great job today.
All right, so about 2 minutes. I'll start by introducing your session. I'll time you for 20, and then we'll switch to the other group, and then at the end, we'll have questions for everyone.
Sounds good. Hi, Miss Kinsella. Good to see you.
All right, good morning. Thank you, everyone, again for joining us, and we're going to get started in just about 1 minute. All right, good morning. Welcome, everyone, to our first session for this morning. My name is Joanna Smith, and I'm one of the assistant principals here at Highland Springs High School in Henrico, and I'm looking forward to introducing and helping facilitate these 2 sessions this morning. Our first one is called Support Teacher-Led Learning Through PLC and Teacher Teams. Our presenters are Ashley O'Carroll, who is the Innovative Learning Coach for Henrico County Public Schools. She served 9 years total in the classroom and last year received her National Board Teaching Certification in AYA Social Studies. Dr. Drew Baker works for Henrico County Public Schools as a professional learning specialist. He's also a member of the University of Richmond faculty, teaching several courses in the teacher licensure program. He's a national board certified teacher with research interests in educational psychology, adult learning, and student engagement. Mr. Jason Liebler is the instructional coach at Varina High School, and Mr. Brian Smith is the instructional coach at Highland Springs High School. This session will share resources, research, and strategies used in Henrico County Schools to support teachers to teacher learning in over 70 schools by focusing on teacher-led training to build skill sets and educators to effectively lead PLCs and teacher teams to support student learning and motivation. All right, at this time, I'll start the timer and turn it over to the first group. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Hello, everyone. We are the team from Henrico County Public Schools. Really excited to have you guys with us today. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing our screen and just our team know that as we screen share, people can also see us at the bottom. So you'll be able to see your awesome faces. So this is some work that we are really, really proud to present to you guys. And I'm really going to turn it over to our team of coaches to talk about this. But want to thank you. Feel free to use the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat. So my team, if you guys want to check out the chat as we go too, and ask questions. But I'm going to pass it off to Jason Liebler, who's going to get us started here. And then my team, just let me know, as we need to move slides, feel free to just prompt me.
Yep. And just as thank you so much, Joanna Smith, for introducing us. As you mentioned, we're here because we wanted to talk about PLCs basically in Henrico County and the work that we've done to support teacher-to-teacher learning in, like I said, over 70 schools. And we're focusing on that training-specific, teacher-led, teacher-driven, trying to empower educators so that they feel empowered to be able to actively affect student growth and student learning in the classroom. For our learning goals, we will present resources and frameworks with what we've kind of developed here for teacher-led learning in schools, the research behind the efficacy and the importance of school-based PLCs and teacher teams, and then methods for bringing the research to practice, basically bridging that gap, research to practice in our public schools.
Okay, so the timeline for this kind of began pre-COVID when Dr. Baker decided that we needed some more resources to run impact teams in our individual schools. And he began training coaches around the county as well as administrators using Bloomberg and Pittsford's leading impact teams. And it was overwhelmingly decided at that point that these protocols would really streamline the whole process of running impact teams, and it would really, bring about team efficacy. So due to the teacher demand, there was a follow-up book group that Dr. Baker led. I think it was about 6 or 8 of us, and we began working with Venables, facilitating teacher teams and authentic PLCs. From there, what sort of happened in our route was I brought what Drew had worked with us on back to Highland Springs and took it to my ace, my partner, Ashley O'Carroll, and told her about the potential for implementing these within our PLCs. And we took the ideas to Dr. Ken White. And at that point, Dr. White decided that, this would go really, really well. It would dovetail into our teacher support and our programs that we call Springer Learning Networks, whereby we provide the best PL options that we possibly can for teacher leaders to sort of grow their practice. And so we began working on resources to that end, and simultaneously found out that another one of our collaborative partners and favorite people on the entire planet, Jason Liebler, was also doing this simultaneously out at Varina High School.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of got together at this point and decided that we were going to pool our resources at the request of our 2 principals, Darren Thornton and Ken White. We got together and began to share resources. And I'll turn it over at this point to Jason and let him talk about the curation of these resources that he did.
Mm-hmm. And it was kind of interesting. It was almost like the universe knew that our 2 schools on the east end of Henrico were thinking about something to do, thinking about something different, both for Brian and myself, and also our leaders, Dr. Ken White, and then Principal Darren Thompson. Principal Thompson kind of talked to me. I talked to Brian about it as well, about how could we cultivate more of a teacher-led, teacher-empowered professional learning, not this top-down type of professional development, but what were teachers seeing in the classrooms? What were the needs that they wanted, or that they were seeing, and how could we help them address those needs? So we were doing our book study over here with Venables facilitating PLCs. And then we started building. We started figuring out what resources we could use or what we needed to really start putting it in the hands of teachers and supporting that space for them to be able to start kind of hacking through these ideas. And we developed the protocols that you'll see in a little bit. It's kind of like a warehouse or kind of container where all these different protocols are there with videos, with explanations, with the whole nine. So teachers could take them right as they were and begin implementing them and designing and testing and running and reflecting on the protocols and the effect they're having on student growth.
So we took these protocols and we demonstrated a couple of them to a group of about 26 educators from around the county, sort of to test the waters with the presentation, as well as to sort of get some feedback from them on how well they feel it would prepare them to go out in their schools and begin implementing these protocols using the digital supports that we developed within their PLCs. Overwhelmingly, the response to the feedback that we got was overwhelmingly positive. Out of about 26 educators, we found that we were scoring in the top end of the scores in terms of preparation. I have a slide next that will sort of show our results, as well as an overwhelming interest in continuing on with the resources that we were planning to build out on HCPSU, as well as subsequent PL that we were going to offer, deeper dives into the content and more protocols that we were going to develop.
So we kind of wanted to get into why were we wanting to have these PLCs in our school. And if you go to the next slide, you can kind of see, and we took this from Venables' text of factors for teacher buy-in and buy-out. And a lot of our staff members were already meeting, but it was more of a department meeting, and it was mutual planning versus always getting down to like some of the things that they really wanted to discuss. Looking at data and having actionable steps or goals that they could do as a team. And these were kind of some of the factors that really stood out that we put on this list here with our teachers, where they really wanted to feel like their time was valued and that they were getting things done during their staff meetings. A lot of them were sometimes a little bit frustrated, and sometimes the meetings might not go as they planned, or they might kind of get derailed with other conversations. So implementing these protocols have really helped our teams, our PLC team, stay on track with the things that they want to be talking about, evaluating student work, and then taking actionable steps from there. And that's how you're going to get your buy-in from teachers if they see that the time that they're spending in these meetings is getting results versus just kind of getting together once a week just to have a conversation, or maybe everyone's complaining or they're venting but not getting much done, because that's what kind of happens sometimes. So we started with training at the level of our PLC leads and got them in on like what are the qualifications of a good PLC meeting and what does that look like. So we got them trained on those aspects.
So one of the things, so just to kind of recap where we are with this, right? What happened was we started, and this is why we're presenting it here at Merck and why we think it could be valuable for you guys who are here attending. First, we started with a very small group, mostly of instructional coaches, to work on PLCs. PLCs, just to make sure that we do know what those are, that's where we have professional learning communities. And what we're doing with PLCs is we are empowering teachers to every week, every other week, get together and improve practice. We're going to talk about how that's different than like co-planning or just, getting together as a team to say, hey, what are we going to teach next? Jason's going to go over that. But I want to stress that PLCs, when they're done well, are one of the highest impact pieces of professional learning you can do to make a difference with students' academic progress, teacher morale, teacher collective efficacy, which means how well a group of teachers think that they can, do a task. And and also teacher retention. When they're done poorly, they actually have a negative effect. So I don't know, some of you guys, it may be great to put up a poll really quick on like, are your experiences with PLCs mostly positive or mostly negative if you've ever been a part of them? You know, PLC is a group of like 7 to 8 teachers who get together. They're looking at things that are happening in the classroom, student data, but also videos of themselves teaching. They might practice, you know, doing some strategies in front of one another. And so when it's done really well, it's super powerful. When it's done really poorly, it's not. So what the reason why we think this is worth sharing is because we started with like really training a small group of leaders who then went out in their school and connected with each other organically, and then brought together their resources and then brought them back up to the division. And now we're training more people. So as we talk about the difference in research to practice, which is a big theme of the MERC conference, this is what research to practice looks like. We worked with it in one case. We took some research-based strategies and worked with some leaders. They played with it in their buildings and created really practical materials that we then grabbed and continued to train more people. And it's that playoff between at the division level, what we knew is best practice through research, and then what could actually happen in schools. And we came up with a really good program.
So now I'm going to get into how we implemented this just at the school level with our PLC leads. This is the training that we took them through. And this was based off of Venable's text and a little bit of Doug Fisher's PLC playbook, which are both great resources. And this is what we kind of thought under the last year column was the basic essentials of what a PLC team needs to run and be efficient. And so we trained our leaders on making sure that they set their meeting norms and roles. We talked about what their role was as a facilitator. So talking about how they're more of a facilitator, they keep the meeting on time, they keep the discussions going the way that they need to go, but they also don't take too much control of the meeting so that they're the only one talking and leading everything. We talked about building buy-in and relationships, which is really important in PLCs because everyone wants to make sure that they feel heard and that they're part of the group. The biggest thing was implementing protocols to facilitate those conversations during PLCs. Brian's going to go into that in just a bit, but an example would be just doing something like a notice and wonder protocol or a 3-2-1 protocol, and then having data-driven conversations, setting goals, and then having a debrief. So that's kind of the way that most PLC meetings function in kind of like a linear way. And so once we got our PLC leads implementing these things regularly in their meetings, we got feedback from the teachers on like, how were they liking the protocols? How did they feel that their time was being spent? Did they feel like it was more efficient than some of their old meetings where maybe they were just planning? And then this year, we're trying to take those into a new level. We're differentiating the leaders by experience because now we do have some new PLC leads this year. So we're going to do a tiered support group where we have our new PLC leads kind of going through the training that we went into last year, focusing on protocols and implementing those protocols. And then the more advanced groups that have already been doing this and using their protocols, they're going to be now looking at actually choosing goals that they want to implement throughout the year, and then using those protocols to facilitate those conversations around the data.
So very much in line with the coaching model that we use in Henrico County Public Schools, we believe that that everything that teachers need is sort of already within their understanding and their grasp, and we're just trying to help bring that out. We're trying to make that whole process easier. So not only do these protocols streamline the meeting process, they help record keeping by providing easy links. They also just kind of help teachers do what they're already doing just a little more efficiently. They help, they were already proactively vetting instruction, and this helps them just have a template by which they can look back and they can sort of measure their growth as they go in that whole process. Jason Liebler set up this amazing matrix that helps you take a look at the specific protocols and instances in which you might use them. So it categorizes them. And this matrix is a really handy tool that we sort of house the protocols in. And that's sort of what we're trying to present and push and grow.
And this is another great example of research to practice, right? These are research-based protocols that have really been tested out by the groups who are looking to see, how much do PLCs actually impact things like teacher collective efficacy, like impact on student performance, on retention. And then what these guys did is they really became the masters of taking research to practice, and they put these all in like copyable Google Docs so that a teacher can take these protocols, make a copy of it, and really implement it quickly and efficiently.
I guess it would help if I unmuted. So in that vein, when we're talking about professional learning communities, there are a lot of similarities with content group planning, but there are some kind of differences that need to be pointed out. Specifically, the idea of like a content group planning, that's the short-term planning, that's standard-based planning. What are we teaching tomorrow? What are we teaching next week? Let's write this assessment for this particular content piece. When we talk about professional learning communities, it's still a group of teachers working towards a common goal. It's still focused on student-centered conversations and student-centered results. But we talk about PLCs, we're talking about more designed for teacher growth as a professional, building that capacity within teachers and then within the school, utilizing the protocols themselves as a structured way, as we've talked about, as getting results based on a very kind of a framework that can be modified as needed, but in general provided so that teachers can be efficient with their time. And then like it can basically, these can occur kind of anytime. As Venable says, you build the group before you need it. And so a lot of our work has been going into those types of conversations where teachers are now feeling more empowered to build on their own outside of their content group. And yeah.
We put 2 examples of protocols in here, and for time purposes, we're not going to show them. But in case you want to view them, the links are in there. The first is a Notice Wonder protocol that was done in a math PLC. It's kind of using the Observe Me format where the teacher requests a specific level of feedback, and the teacher requests very specific feedback on a particular part of a lesson. And the second one was an Irks and Quirks protocol that the Highland Springs High School Faculty Senate used to norm out meeting procedures for the entire year. So you could take a look at them and see, how do the protocols fit into the actual purpose that we were driving towards, and, how well do we utilize it? And like Jason said, we keep it very flexible and adapt the protocols as needed.
So to pull this together with our last couple minutes, really what we've done, and this is another big way to bridge that research to practice gap, is by creating a micro-credential. A micro-credential is a form of professional learning that is like above kind of just, hey, come to this one session, but below, hey, this is a full certification, like a gifted endorsement or like a master's degree. So what we've done is we've created, ends up being about 8 hours total of taking all of these strategies that started kind of by consulting research, but then were field tested and honed by these coaches. And then we're able to pull it out division wide, where we create a micro credential for leading PLCs. We've done in-person trainings. We've done a mix of asynchronous trainings using our learning management system, Schoology. And then we're also doing synchronous meetings where we talk about this. Also, hey, if you guys want to check out that, we've got a poll that kind of talks a little bit about PLCs. If you want to click on the poll here and interact with it. Here are some of the benefits for PLCs. You guys can take a look. I've mentioned a lot of these, but everything from improving instructional practice to collective efficacy in and of itself actually has a huge impact on academic success for students too. One, it's just good because teachers feel more confident as a group, but 2, it ends up helping students, bumps up retention and morale. So we've put everything, you heard these guys talk about HCPSU. It is like a website where we house resources, and we have everything from these protocols to video examples to ongoing PL, and then kind of general resources. So we're really excited about this. We're in our first year of going through it. Be happy to share any of these materials. If you're doing this in your division, we'd love to talk to you about it. Here's our contact information. We're on all 4 of us are on Twitter like too much. So feel free to hit us up and send an email. We look forward to having our Q&A at the end. And now we are right at 20. So Joanna, we're going to pass it off back to you to make sure that we can hear from everybody else presenting today.
Thank you so much. Great job. Appreciate it. Looking forward to those questions and answers at the end. Right, to transition to the second presentation. The title is Interdisciplinary Collaborative Leadership Leads to Teacher and Student Excellence. Amy Jones, Sarah Billups, and Jan Collins serve together in Hanover County Public Schools. Amy is the math coordinator who brings logic and numbers to all of our discussions. Jan Collins is the ELA coordinator who reminds us to stop and read all situations. Sarah Billups fills in the blanks as the special education coordinator. As a trio, they work steadfastly to bring perspective to curriculum for the benefit of their teachers and students. They are strong believers in collaboration and bring multiple viewpoints to the table in order to foster a holistic view of instruction. So I'll turn it over to the three of you, and I'll let you know at the 20-minute mark so we can transition to our questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And unfortunately, Jan couldn't join us today because she is touring Virginia Tech with her daughter. So we are very excited for them and happy to carry on in her absence. Go ahead, Amy. So we just kind of wanted to anchor our discussion today in Hattie and the idea of collective efficacy. We've really benefited from collective efficacy as a group of instructional leaders, but also see the benefits in our school and with the administrators that we work with.
So we want to talk a little bit about our practice, what it is that we do and how we do it.
Oh no, Amy, you're muted.
Thank you, Sarah. That mute button is a tricky one today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our practice and what it is that we do and how we do it. Joanna introduced us. We think of ourselves as a dynamic trio here. We've really grown together in our roles, and that collaboration started early on for us as we each entered our roles here. We kind of gravitated towards one another, sharing the work that we're doing, and just talking about what we're seeing in schools and what we're doing to support teachers and how our teachers are growing and learning. And through those conversations, our collaboration continued to build into actually working together in our work and planning professional learning together. And we'll go into a little bit of the specific parts of what we do, but that collaboration early on, we just realized that we were learning so much from one another and that we could take that learning further into our schools with our leaders and with our teachers. So all serving kind of in a similar role here in our division, but each in a different capacity with math, ELA, and special education, and just realizing that those three pieces really fit together very nicely, even when a lot of folks and even sometimes ourselves tend to think that they are siloed. We've found just such a huge benefit in us working and collaborating together. So some of our practices, we'll talk about each of our big areas of work. And the first is learning walks. We participate in collaborative learning walks together. That was something that we, in the beginning, did individually and had conversations together about what we were seeing in buildings and how we were taking that information and turning it into professional learning for our teachers, and realizing that there were so many commonalities and things that we could tackle together to help build that message for our teachers and making it kind of one message together. So those learning walks, we now do a lot of that collaboratively together. So Sarah and I actually walked a building just a couple of days ago, and we're able to hop into some math classrooms, both collaborative and non-collaborative, and really reflect on what it is we're seeing with our students in the classrooms, what growth we've seen in our teachers and in our students, and maybe some next steps and perhaps some professional learning that might need to take place to support our teachers in moving a little bit forward. That being said, we don't always walk together. Sarah and I debriefed on some math classrooms that we walked separately the week before last. And so that conversation and that collaboration is also very powerful. We're able to talk about, when I went to this middle school, these are some things that I saw. These are some things that we've been working on, and I saw growth in both teachers and students here. And this might be an area that, teachers are asking for support in. So how might we provide some professional learning there? So we found value in that. The teachers that we support have also found value in that. But But even more importantly, we're learning that from our administrators that collaboration piece of and us doing those learning walks together is really valuable to them, because we're able to sometimes pull administrators in when Sarah and I walk together, or when Jan and Sarah walk together. And then they can see that shared perspective from both the special education lens and the math lens, or in Jan's situation, in the ELA lens. We've even done collaborative walks, all three of us together, walking in ELA and math classrooms together, and that was pretty powerful as well. As we do these walks and collect that data and kind of measure the growth that we're seeing from the professional learning that we've offered for our teachers, we think about what future professional learning might need to take place to further that growth and support. And Sarah's going to talk a little bit about that.
So what's been really amazing is this has led to some joint professional learning where schools have called me in to talk about co-teaching and what the best practices are to really grow their co-teaching practice. And I have the benefit of Amy and Jan coming as well in order to provide the gen ed perspective. So then we are more effectively able to speak with both our gen ed and special ed teachers and speak to both of their practices in the same session. This is also driven some of our discussions with our administrators and some of our professional learning that we've developed for them. One of our big ahas when the three of us walked was that there are best practices in a testing environment. And we reflected on that and we were like, wait, typically we're not going into testing environments to observe, but when we walked into some testing environments, we were like, these aren't really best practices. So how do we help our administration to see that and encourage them to go in and coach with teachers around that? So we were, through these walks, it's really driven that professional learning and our collaboration in professional learning. The other really powerful part is Amy and Jan both included the special ed perspective in their required professional learning for their general education teachers as well. We created some videos that you'll see an example of in a little bit. And this has given training materials not only to our administrators, but also kind of given a greater perspective to our teachers. And when it comes to education, we are constantly reminding teachers to be collaborative and to be equal co-teachers, but we don't always model that as instructional leaders. And I think that's been really powerful, that we are a true collaborative team. And that's what our teachers are seeing when we are doing these walks and doing the professional learning. They are seeing both perspectives at the same table equally. In our curriculum development, I have worked jointly with Jan to develop some units and worked with Amy to have some really deep instructional and curriculum discussions. And it's really brought in both of our perspectives. So I have a better understanding of the general ed curriculum and what the expectation on that side of the fence is. And then they have a better understanding of what best practices for specially designed instruction is and co-teaching. And so both are being reflected in our division sponsored curriculum. Go ahead. So what's different? Obviously, these three practices happen in most places. So we wanted to point out what we're doing, what we think we're doing differently and why we think it works. And so the learning walks, obviously, like Amy touched on, we're doing this collaboratively. We're walking together. Our administration is very supportive of that. They've started requesting that we walk together rather than have separate walks in order to get a greater perspective. With our professional learning, our teachers are receiving clear and unified messages on both special education practices and general education practices, regardless of who the messenger is. And we are developing well-rounded teachers who are grounded in both practices. In our curriculum development, we work collaboratively and make sure that both perspectives are evident in our curriculum. And like we said, oftentimes, unfortunately, in education, we end up in our silos of I am a math teacher or I am an English teacher, and we lose perspective of the multiple perspectives that are out there. And I think this has really kind of helped blend those teaching practices so that we can have the best case scenario. Okay, next we're going to kind of talk about what impact we have seen through these practices and why we think it's important. There's a lot of recent research around collaborative leadership and how it's incredibly important in our schools, but I would argue it's also incredibly important on the division level. Collaborative leadership increases our creativity, it increases effective communication because stakeholders are more knowledgeable. Mutual trust, creative problem solving, and conflict management. When we're in silos, we are not bouncing our ideas off of each other and kind of building those ideas. And we have found through our collaborative leadership that we've been able to kind of build our ideas to be even better because we have greater perspective from each other. It also tends to shift our focus from our individual selves back to the mission and students. So we're not focused just on what the special ed perspective is and what our goal is, but the greater goals of the division and ultimately what is best for our students in the buildings.
So, as Sarah mentioned, us visibly working together, we've been able to provide that example to teachers and to leaders of that collaboration in action. And so, Sarah mentioned one of the things that we've been working a lot on is that collaborative relationship with our co-teaching, both general ed partners and special education partners. And that's been really powerful for them to see us collaborating together and modeling that collaborative relationship in the professional learning that we do, but also in those learning walks and hearing feedback from each of us and hearing it together. We've also been able to develop that professional learning and coaching teachers around that co-teaching relationship, not only modeling, but giving them quality resources about that co-teaching relationship. So one of the things that we've done, as Sarah mentioned before, is in our professional learning where we led teachers in that co-teaching relationship, we spent some time thinking about what that professional learning needed to look like. And we were pretty purposeful in giving some concrete examples to our teachers so that they could see what planning looked like, what collaborative planning could look like, and giving them some examples. We gave lesson plans that were made by a general education teacher, and then the special education teacher came in and annotated. And that was something that Sarah and I talked through. And then she and Jan did something very similar and did it kind of from a different perspective. Sarah and I did it more from a remote kind of planning lens, and Jan and Sarah took it from more of a I'm sitting down with you in planning, so that teachers were able to see both sides of it. We also created some videos of Jan and Sarah, and then also Sarah and I having those collaborative conversations around planning, so that teachers were able to see, what does that look like when I, as a general education teacher, have a plan in place for my work, my lesson for the next day, and then I need to consider what that special education teacher can bring into that lesson to really specialize the instruction for our students. And that was really powerful for our teachers to see that in action and to see some options of what that could look like, with that ultimate goal of impacting student learning there. The other piece that we've brought in from all of this learning together and from our actions together is being able to carry that into our coaching conversations with teachers and other leaders. So I know I have learned a lot from Sarah, and I know that Sarah and Jan would say the same about each of us. So when I'm talking with teachers, especially when I'm talking with perhaps a special educator who collaborates in a math classroom, I feel much more confident that we are sending the same message, and that I can put in some plugs for the work that Sarah is focused on and what that looks like in a math classroom. And I know that even taking that ELA perspective and talking about that through the math classroom, thinking about what reading and writing could look like there, has just been really powerful for teachers to hear that same message pretty consistently from the three of us, but also knowing that I'm growing in my own learning and much more confident in making those connections for teachers and sending that unified message. So that's been something that we've been able to do kind of separately in our own work, is take our collaborative learning together and move that into that coaching of teachers.
I think it's important to emphasize that we all work at, Amy and Jan touch on elementary too. I am only secondary. So this work is happening in middle schools and high schools. And I think that is huge because, as most secondary educators know, that's where we tend to get siloed. We tend to get lost in our classroom and we don't look outside of it, or lost in our content. So I think modeling these cross-curricular conversations is even incredibly powerful for our teachers, because they can see that this is valuable work and that it's important to kind of get out of our room and see what other people are doing.
I'll piggyback on that a little bit too, Sarah, before we roll into the next slide. There is, I think that that's helpful for administrators in secondary buildings too, so that when they're, receiving feedback from us at the division level in their own building, they're not thinking of it as, okay, well, this is what special education needs to work on, and this is what ELA needs to work on, and this is what math needs to work on, and this is where we are with them, and this is where we need to go to move forward. But we're thinking about, okay, in math collaborative classrooms, these are some things that we can do to support both special education and general education. And it's kind of seeing it as one thing rather than multiple, which is always easy for an administrator to make some connections there, especially during, the past couple of years where things have been a little bit more fragmented.
It definitely increases the equity in the teaching roles. So our impact has we've measured it on different levels. On the building level, our administration and teachers feel better supported. It provides them with the understanding that we are all on the same page. They know that they can reach out to any of us and we will get in touch with the other one if we happen to be in the building and someone's classroom is on fire. So that helps because it just gives them more people to reach out to. On the division level, this has crossed those silos and those typical divides between general education and special education leadership. All of our superiors are very supportive of that, and we feel like this provides them with more comprehensive information when we're making those larger division decisions and goals, and we're seeing movement in our students and our teachers in achievement as well. So circling back to collective efficacy, our collective efficacy as a team has really impacted other leaders and teachers that we work with. It ultimately means that they have higher expectations for students. Those expectations come from us. We are constantly reminding people that the expectations are high and the students will meet them. And it increases our ability to advocate for higher quality instruction in our buildings.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. The collective efficacy that we're building is as Sarah mentioned, that with leaders and with teachers that we're working with, we're seeing not only myself growing in my own confidence with being able to speak to special education and what that looks like in a math classroom, but seeing that grow in our teachers and in our leaders as well. So, the work that we're doing, we're just seeing such a huge impact in the conversations that we're able to have with administrators and with teachers. And then we're seeing that reflected in the classrooms as well.
We are happy to talk about any of this. If anyone has further discussion points, feel free to reach out to any of us. If it's more specific for math or ELA or special ed.
Well, thank you very much. All right, if anyone has any questions for either one of these groups in their presentation, please feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself, and they'll be happy to answer your questions for the next 15 minutes.
Joanna, I've got one actually for Amy and Sarah. Is that cool?
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Want to see, so because I actually think we kind of need to do this too. When you guys are obviously focusing on collective efficacy is something we're both really looking at. In the past, I've used surveys like where we're actually measuring groups, CE, collective efficacy, as it goes up. But we have not done it for PLCs, and this is making me think we should do that. Did you guys do any of that? And I might have missed it as it was going on. Have y'all thought about measuring it? We have not for PLCs, but as you were talking about it kind of got me thinking. Have you done any kind of pre or post, or is that something you guys would be interested in?
We have not as of yet, but definitely would be an area that would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think right now, we're really focused in seeing that just anecdotal growth in our teachers and in those conversations, because this is still something we're working towards and kind of building. But I think being able to grab some, hardcore data there to support the actual growth that we're seeing would be really great for us to reflect on as well.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody here, especially because VCU has a pretty good ed psych program. Shout out to that group. I don't know if anybody has a good scale for collective efficacy. I'm sure we could go dive in, but I don't know if anybody on the academia side talking about research to practice has one you want to do or want to come in and do research. We basically have two interventions that are going on that just give us a survey so we can send it out in a Google Doc and don't have to dig up and create it. So I don't know if there's any of you guys like Eric, Kim, if anybody else has a good validated survey. I think that would be a really cool thing for us to use, and I'd be happy to shoot it to y'all if we end up doing it.
Thank you for your question. Does anyone else have any? You all have some great feedback on your sessions and presentations. But I don't see any other questions in the chat. Feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself. We can use wait time effectively though, right? Thank you. For those of you that didn't notice in the chat, both groups have put their slide presentations if you'd like to check those out later. Karen Horn says, I appreciate the work Sarah and Amy are doing, creating a we for all students, general ed and special ed serving together, and the approach. Christopher says, thank you for sharing your work. This is great. Matt says, these are great presentations. Thank you so much. Awesome work. Thanks for sharing, said Angela. And Kim McKnight said, 100% agree with the discussion of collective efficacy. Way to go.
What's up, Dr. Armstrong? Good to see you, Andy. Hope you're doing well. Hey, I've got another one too on here, thinking about y'all that are in higher ed, thinking about some of this work with peer observations and PLCs. I know it's not something that typically happens with faculty, but would be super interested in if any of you guys have this work, have been doing this on the higher ed side, having I know a lot of us have a foot in both worlds, and I see a lot of this being done with professional learning communities or peer observation or learning walks happening in K through 12, but don't always see it in higher ed. I wasn't sure if anybody had any experience with this, but if you do, hit it up in the chat or let us know if anybody's done PLCs in the higher ed, or if anybody needs some of the resources we have. I think that could be a cool connection.
Do you mind sharing, Drew, how you all were able to get the books? I think you said that you all acquired them. Did you have a grant for that, or did each school individually buy the books that you referenced?
We actually started doing one of the things that we've done, and this is a nice thing for the different school divisions. Chesterfield, I know, has a pretty good contract with Corwin, but we've started doing ebooks. And it's been really nice because each package of ebooks costs a lot, but for having 4,500 teachers, once we have the materials, especially post-COVID, when people are kind of more familiar with going online to get PD or PL, we're able to like put up individual chapters. And so yeah, and Angela Stewart, my colleague on here, has gone through Gale Virtual Library, and that's what we use. So we were able to purchase it at the division level, but it's way more cost effective because like now we have copies for everybody in the division, and we almost don't even use the whole books as much. Like, it's not like we give out the book and we say, read the whole thing. We pull out certain chapters, and we've actually started to splice some of these together. Like we have the PLC Plus playbook, which is like Doug Fisher. He's in the John Hattie Industrial Complex, and Nancy Fryer in there. And then we also have this Venables book. And so the cool thing too is like Brian's leading a book study right now with his admin team on this PLC crew, and Brandon Petrovsky, who's right in here, is at Tucker High School. And Brandon, I know you guys are doing the Venables book. So we did not get grant money. We were able to pay for it with division funds, but it ends up being a lot cheaper. And I think we've had the going ebooks for this kind of work has made a big difference.
Thank you. All right, there is one question here in the chat. It says, excellent presentation. With coming back to school after a year of COVID, have you all experienced teacher pushbacks with PLCs? If so, how have you navigated this? In our division, teachers have to meet after school for PLCs, and they're getting burnt out. Any suggestions?
Coaches, I'll let you all hit that one up.
Well, I'll take on this one just for a minute, and then Brian, maybe you can, and Jason, you guys can add in. But we schedule common planning for a lot of our teachers here so that they don't have to meet before or after school. So a lot of them will meet during their common planning periods. And they've seen more of how they can get through a lot of things using these protocols. So we haven't really had as much pushback on that because they've seen the value in it and how it helps them be able to plan more efficiently together. Brian, did you want to add to that?
Well, I'm in line with Drew and everyone else on the team in that I believe that a lot of, if not all, PL should be teacher directed, teacher determined, teacher charted. And I think that this is something that people want. There's been a lot of talk, and rightly so, about providing grace for teachers to fall back and to get things together in these unusual times and in these unusual circumstances. But I'm a firm believer that grace for a lot of teachers is formulating a plan, is trying to push ahead, is trying to work for solutions. And I think that implementing the protocols in PLCs is grace. I think it's a great organizing principle. It's a great way, again, to build that collective efficacy that we're looking to build. So for teachers like me, falling back isn't the answer. For teachers like me, pushing ahead is. And I think there are a lot of like-minded people. Drew was just saying we've already started to build out from here to the next step, which is Venable's next book, Turning Data into Action. So we're going to try to take some of the data that our PLCs start to accrue and actually try to work on not only increasing our data literacy, but building that into action plans. So like I said, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to look at this, but I really do believe that the work is really desired. And if you build it, they'll come. Leaves?
Yeah. Jason, what do you think? And then I want to speak a little bit about PL and burnout in general, because I think that's a really important topic for right now.
It is. And, I think across the county, across the state, across the country, we're seeing a lot of teacher burnout, a lot of the extra weight being foisted on teachers to deal with all of the other parts of the school, whether it be covering classes or, extra work just in general. What I've found, especially here at Verina, is that if you treat teachers as professionals and you give them something that they really, 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 really want, which is time, and by the end of the meeting, providing something that the teacher can use specifically right now, here we go, let's go, let's build on this, you'll find that more teachers are more willing to do that rather than the top-down prescribed PL that they now have to translate into their students in the classes, and how is this going to affect my students. So by providing that voice to teachers as professionals has found like more teachers willing to have conversations and building that teacher efficacy as each other as professionals, and starting to get out of those silos a little bit and start talking with other teachers, having those conversations. At Varina, we don't have one building, we're 15 buildings, and we're all connected by sidewalks. Sometimes it's hard to get out of that classroom and go talk to somebody else and see somebody on the sidewalk. PLCs help us do that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to notice too, if you're seeing that your professional learning is causing burnout, it's probably not an issue with your teachers, and it's probably an issue with your professional learning. We know that one of the biggest things for quality professional learning and adult learning is autonomy. Autonomy is one of the three, according to like industrial organizational psychologist Adam Grant has a great podcast that talks all about this, if you've never heard of him. But we need to have teacher autonomy. So if you're seeing that like having this mandated PLCs at the end and the teachers aren't finding value, well, you need to show them the value. This is why I'm a really big with both these schools. They kind of had leadership come in and be like, we're going to do PLCs top to bottom. And luckily these coaches, and we were able to come in and say, start with a pilot group, show the value added. And then when teachers see that there's value, a good PLC saves time. And it actually it makes teachers feel more comfortable. So it's way better. It's better to be working as a group rather than working in isolation. But if a PLC is focused on, it's not really a PLC if all they're doing is meeting, they're looking at student data from a multiple choice test, they're identifying the kids that are low and giving them more of the same, probably ineffective instruction, that's not a PLC. The PLC is supposed to be building collective efficacy. We think we can do better. And it's where we're really looking at instructional practice. One of the things these guys know I've been trying to debunk with this PLC work is having people focus on more qualitative data, because like we are coming in where we think PLCs are just like, it's all tied with state accreditation. So I think we need, and that takes away a lot of the autonomy. So you want to give these people a lot of autonomy, really high training on facilitators, support from coaches like these guys, and then show how it saves them time. And that's how you can react to it. Oh yeah. Word. Way to go. Joanna, you're like the greatest facilitator of all time.
Great comments. And we had a couple of other people share some resources too. I like Karen said, the side benefit is you have greater respect for yourself as professional educators. You're actually encouraging everyone to step up. You know, we're kind of just like we want to increase rigor for students. We're kind of helping make our PLC work a little more rigorous and meaningful. And then Amy mentioned that looking at the focus and finding it eases the stress. So again, that might help combat the burnout. Andy says this prompts a bigger conversation about some of the archaic structures in public education that we've tolerated, but aren't necessarily benefiting teachers, kids, calendar, pay, credibility. And Mike says PLCs continue to be the focus for us because we believe it's a solution to learning loss. Wish we could all get the common planning time. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
And Mike, if you guys are doing this, feel free to reach out. We put the slides up in here. So, you know, if you guys want resources, or it looks like you're out in Tuano, and like, we're happy to, I mean, that's the cool thing with the MERC conference is it's easy to go work with people. So if you need anything, just shoot us an email, hit us up on Twitter, whatever.
Does anyone else have any questions? We have about 6 more minutes remaining. All right, Mike said, thank you. Awesome resource. Protected time for a PLC is close to essential. All right, and Andrew Harris says we'll also try to post these slides on the website. And Andy Armstrong says we have to stop jamming it into one of these one-on-one off days. Make the collaboration meaningful. That's professionalism.
Yeah, to speak to Andy, Andy's we got to, man, haven't seen you forever, man. It's so good. One of the great instructional leader. When we've been training people with PLCs to do it right, training the facilitator and then also providing training for the administrators goes a really long way. I would say that like something that we see a big gap of knowledge in is our school leaders are generally aware that things like walkthroughs, like what Amy and Sarah are like, talking about, and PLCs are good, but they're also two things that when done poorly, like I've never seen evidence on this, but they have to have a negative effect. I think poorly done. I mean, who would do that research project? But like, I'm sure that PLCs, when done poorly, like add to teacher burnout and decrease morale. I mean, I've seen it in so many buildings. So training administrators who like a lot of times they know PLCs are good and they have their hand on a trigger and they'll put them in, but it'll happen too fast. And it's same thing with like walkthroughs or observations or even coaching. So I think that if you're at the division level or you're working with a school or you're in a school, really building up the time between your facilitators and your admins goes a long way. And when we do training, we try to incorporate admins in our training as much as possible, and coaches too, because we have a really great coaching culture in Henrico. So getting those people on board really helps like make them effective to where teachers find them valuable. And we start to get that collective efficacy boost that we're talking about.
And that's what I love about the protocol piece, because that kind of helps make sure that you're on task. As Ms. O'Carroll said, sometimes people come in with, maybe they had a rough day. Having that protocol kind of helps guide and structure the conversation, but letting it be teacher-led, teacher-driven can kind of help also curb that and make sure that it's more meaningful.
Yeah. And when we see PLCs as like the antidote to like, let me identify a subgroup to bump up our scores and get in my school, like in my VSIP plan or something like that. Like when it's seen as that tool instead of a true tool for like teacher growth and retention, it can sometimes cause conflict.
I think one thing I've seen this year is that kind of a positive side effect of everything we went through with COVID is there is a stronger need for community, and teachers are kind of spontaneously creating these groups in their spaces as well, even if it's not being provided, because they want that sense of community and collaboration, where before we weren't seeing that as much. I think it's kind of spontaneously developing even outside of what leadership is requiring.
Andy Armstrong said, yes, building leadership is key. And I think with both of your presentations, having these set in place, especially for our new teachers and the transition from being virtual back into buildings, I think is great to have that support and having it already in place. So you're able to transition new people new to the building or new to the profession, or just haven't taught in person for a while. I think both of your presentations help with that. Right, well, I haven't seen any other questions or comments in the chat, but again, I want to thank all of our presenters for both sessions. Thank you so much. I love the application piece for each one that can be taken back to any division across the state, not just in the MERC conference region. And I also am so grateful for your dedication to supporting our teachers. They especially need it right now. So thank you for investing in them, whether in your school, and then also for us all here at the conference. So thank you all so much for your time, effort, and energy. And our next session will be starting at 10:20. So you're welcome to take a quick break. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and have a great day and weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Later, everybody.
Yeah, great job, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah.